Good evening, everyone. We thank you for joining us in this virtual world. I bring you greetings from the Elm Grove Baptist Church, which is located in the beautiful Baton Rouge, Louisiana, led by our pastor, Dr. Errol Domain. I am Keisha Moore, a member of Elm Grove's Abundant Living Ministry, which is our health and wellness ministry. We are advocates for making certain that our community, as well as our churchgoers, are healthy and aware of what's going on in their lives. So, on behalf of the Abundant Living Ministry of Elm Grove, we would like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us. And we will also like to thank our panelists for joining us this evening as well. We encourage you to engage in our interactive. So, yes, get engaged, talk to us, engage in our interactive discussion on navigating life during a global pandemic. We understand that these are unprecedented times, which may cause a great strain on your mental as well as your emotional state of well being. So, let's get involved and help others and help yourselves. So, get involved by sharing, liking, and pressing, and even joining in church, getting a watch party started. Let's get ready to go live with all of this, right? So we thank you for joining us with this. To continue, and good evening, everyone. To continue, we have our lovely host this evening. We have Miss Reagan Carter. I would like to introduce Miss Carter to you all. She is the owner as well as founder and lead consultant of the Brainstorm Agency. She is a graduate of the Southern University, located right here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where she obtained her Bachelor of Science degree in social work, as well as she has graduated from Tulane University, where she obtained both her Master of Social Work degree and a Master of Public Health degree. Ms. Reagan provides consulting services to multiple agencies, governmental agencies, on public health policy issues, as well as public affairs. Ms. Reagan is passionate about social and racial justice and is particularly interested in health disparities impacting women of color, communities of color, and working to engage faith leaders in public health and social justice advocacy. I must also state that she is also a member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So we welcome you, Ms. Carter, and we will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me as the host. I'm really, really excited to be here. I am a member of Elm Grove Baptist Church, so this is a distinct honor to be a part of this with our church. I have the pleasure of being the host. I'm going to first introduce all of our panelists, and then we'll move right into our program. As Ms. Moore mentioned, we encourage everyone to be active and participate. The first panelist that I will introduce is Mr. Harry Turner. Mr. Turner is a licensed clinical social worker whose work experience includes employment in a mental health department of a multi-level security state correctional center, the emergency department of a major nonprofit hospital, and a major community mental health center in Baton Rouge. He currently works out of his private practice in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Mr. Turner has a wealth of accreditations, including a certified mental health integrative medicine provider, certified cognitive behavior therapist, and many, many more. We're excited to have Mr. Turner to join us tonight. Next, we have Ms. Daphne Olivier. She is known as the unconventional dietitian. She is from South Louisiana. She has a BS in dietetics from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette and completed an internship working with beloved veterans of the country. Ms. Daphne has worked in rural hospital cafeterias and rehab people after major heart surgery or vehicle accidents. She recently completed a certification to become Louisiana's first and only integrative and functional nutrition certified practitioner, which gives her the tools to help to get the root of the challenges that challenge us all. We're also really, really excited to have Mr. Myron Daniels. He is the Deputy Chief in the Baton Rouge Police Department. He is a 22-year veteran with the Baton Rouge Police Department. He also currently serves as the Chief of Staff. With a background in training, Deputy Chief Daniels has trained thousands throughout the city, state, and country on topics varying from domestic violence to defensive tactics. Mr. Daniels received a BS and an MS, both in criminal justice, from the Southern University A&M College in Baton Rouge. We also have Ms. Maya McWhorter. She is a 19-year-old college student. And prior to COVID-19, Ms. McWhorter attended Dillard University in New Orleans and is still currently enrolled. She is also a member of the Elm Grove Baptist Church, Abundant Living, and Youth Adult Ministry. Ms. McWhorter has done countless speaking engagements, ranging between spoken word to mentoring young girls. We will also have Ms. Tanja Miles. Ms. Miles is an ordained minister, community activist, peer counselor, veteran, and subject matter expert in mental health, untreated trauma, a faith-based approach to substance abuse and recovery. We're really excited to have all of our panelists to join us tonight, and we hope that you all will be engaged in the conversation with us. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. We're going to get started here with some questions. And again, we encourage you to engage with us. You can put your questions in the chat box and we'll do our very best to get to each question. But first, we're going to start with Mr. Turner. Mr. Turner, can you discuss with us how people manage the various types of griefs? And when we talk about the various type of grief, we're talking about during this pandemic, many people are dealing with separation from their families, social isolation, and just grieving the lack of being able to live their normal lives.
Uh-oh. Am I okay? Sounds like I'm unmuted now.
All right, thank you, Mr. Turner.
All right. Awesome sauce. Okay. So real quick, you said, how do people manage? I just got to throw this out here real quick. If you can go to www.whenharrymetdaphne.com, we actually have a podcast. Miss Olivia and I, we actually have a podcast that speaks to a lot of these things. And one of the podcast episodes we just did was on grief. So as far as management is concerned, I know that we're pressed for time. So real quick, how much time do I have? Because that depends on how much I'm gonna put out there for you. How much time do I have?
You have about 5 to 7 minutes for this question.
5 to 7 minutes. All right. So first, let's talk about real quick the different types of grief. All right. So there are several types of grief. There's regular bereavement, which is what you experience whenever we lose a loved one or a loved pet. But there's also complicated grief. And you want to be mindful of when it becomes complicated. Complicated grief simply means is that it has gotten to the point to where it impedes some level of functioning, be it social functioning, be it occupational, but it's starting to impact you outside in the way that you interact with your environment. So you want to pay attention to that. And the symptoms can be as mild irritation, all the way to severe symptoms such as hallucinations. So when you start to experience these things, be mindful of these things and definitely speak to a provider, seek out assistance whenever you see these things. No, you're not going, quote unquote, what people like to say, crazy. No, you're going through a natural stage. Next thing I want to say, and excuse me as I rush through this, because I have a lot to say, and I have a little bit of time. So let me just try to get this out. All right. The next thing I want to say is there's a few types of griefs, all right, that I want to, and one in particular I want to bring up. But the stages of grief before I bring in that type of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. And it's not a linear way that you go through this. And again, I read this again: denial, you're in denial about what you lost. Anger, you're going to this angry phase. Why is this happening to me? Bargaining, how can I make this better for myself? Depression, which is I'm too sad to do anything. And then acceptance, which really brings about peace. And you go back and forth. Sometimes you'll feel like you've accepted something and you jump right back into depression, and then you may be angry one day. So it's not a linear process. But that process was founded by the 1969 Kubler-Ross, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, 1969 by the psychiatrist Kubler-Ross. And so since then, there's been some modifications to that, but that's pretty much the process that we all go through. Now, complicated grief versus regular grief. Understand the difference between grief and depression. Grief is a natural process. Anytime we lose something that is valuable to us, or anytime that the mind even experiences change, it's scared. The mind becomes scared because it's always in this state of trying to maintain its own survival. And so since it's always in that state, when things begin to change and things become unfamiliar, it feels that it is unsafe, and so the mind has a natural grieving process that it must go through in order to accept that this is the new reality, that this is the new normal. Okay, so how do you process that? Again, I got like 2 minutes left.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. All right. So how do we process that? Understand which type of grief that you have. And one in particular, because you can look up these on Google when you have some time, but the one in particular I want to highlight is disenfranchised grief. All right. And so disenfranchised grief is grief when you experience a loss and you feel like it's only you that's experiencing that loss, that nobody is there for you. And a matter of fact, people may even be around you that discount the severity of that loss for you. That's disenfranchised grief because you have nowhere to go. You feel as if you have nobody to reach out to. Okay, so you feel like it's one thing to grieve a loss. It's another thing to grieve a loss and feel that you're grieving a loss all by yourself, that you can't share your pain with anybody else. Okay, so, and I find this to be particularly common in our society because with disenfranchised grief, it doesn't get that highlight because people stay hidden. Because why would I speak out or try to reach out to anybody when nobody understands me anyway? Nobody cares about me anyway. So what I'm gonna reach, and they have their own stuff going on. So that, and also understand complex grief also, since there's so much change and many deaths. We passed 300,000 lost lives due to COVID-19, recently. And I myself personally have had several family members that we've lost. And so understand that there's complicated grief going on out there too. And so it's very common for us to get into the zone of, well, they going through their thing, so I don't have, I'm gonna hold on to mine. Everybody going through something. Understand that you have to find a way to manage your grief. You grieve in your own time. And also you have to find a method that is true and authentic to you. That's why it's so challenging to talk about how to manage grief, because everybody has their own way based off of their own style. All right, so figure out your style, figure out what you're interested in, and move through that. The last thing I want to say real quick, not to take up too much more of your time, but one of the things that we talked about again recently, I think our last episode was on humor. And I want to just read the definition of humor real quick for you. Humor is the quality of perception, perspective, and attitude towards life that enables you to experience joy even when faced with adversity. See, many of us, whenever we're grieving, we hope that we believe that the removal of the adversity is what will bring us peace. But it's not. It's this ability to tune into what it is that you need at a specific time and to address those needs that bring about that peace. And radical acceptance is a practice, is a virtue. Look that up. Please look that up and begin to develop that skill of radical acceptance, because radical acceptance, what that does is it looks at what is instead of what we want it to be. We release those wants. For those of y'all in the church, y'all know the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, the 23rd Psalm. You let go of your wants, because when we hold on to our wants, that causes more suffering. It's when we let go of those wants and we accept exactly what's in front of us that now we can actually move forward and figure out a game plan. But we can't figure out a game plan as long as we hold on to our wants. So we got to let go of those wants so that we can move forward and begin this healing process. And again, take your time with it. Understand that your pain is subjective to you. And no, nobody may not understand exactly the pain that you're going through to the extent that you're going through it. But understand that other people have gone through that same thing, and they do experience those same thoughts that you have, that you think only you that you're only thinking. So reach out to people, reach out to, first off, professionals, and get you some humor in your life. All right, because that humor will give you that peace in the midst of this painful time. Whenever you laugh, if you notice that whenever you're hurting and you laugh, or you're at a party, the pain that you feel, that limp that you had, it all of a sudden goes away. That's because your body is responding to you being in that positive state. You're putting your environment, you're making your internal environment conducive to you healing despite whatever it is that you face. And so I don't want to take up too much more of the time because I could keep going on about this, but just understand that one of the main things that I want you to do is just understand that it is a different challenge. It's not about returning to what it used to be. It is a new normal. Okay. And so first accept that that's a new normal, and then don't judge yourself for your tears. Don't judge yourself for crying, and allow yourself to experience those emotions, because emotions are angelic messages sent there to let you know what your thought life is about. And when you can tune into that, now you can go ahead and tune onto those thoughts. And if those thoughts are not in alignment with with what you're trying to move to, that goal, then you can begin to manage those thoughts. And again, talking to a professional about this will definitely assist you in that process. All right, I'm gonna stop right now because I can say, look, I can keep on going, but I'm gonna stop right here. All right, definitely check out that podcast though, because we
Thank
have some
you
stuff
so
on
much.
there.
We appreciate it
welcome.
so much, Mr. Turner. Thank you. Next, we're going to move on to Mrs. Miles. Ms. Miles, thank you so much for being with us this evening. We appreciate your time and dedication. We certainly appreciate the work that you're doing in the Baton Rouge community. I've been reading a lot about what's happening with increases in addiction and what we're seeing about social isolation due to the pandemic, and how we're seeing people who are battling addiction currently and before the pandemic, and how the addiction have increased. So can you talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing, and what it is that we can do, those of us who may be struggling, those of us who may have family members?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. And look, thank you for doing this panel. It is much needed. COVID fatigue is real. And, we've been in this for a long time and we still have some ways to go. So having these conversations and having these dialogues are necessary for real. It's something that, we normally have not talked about when it comes to mental wellness, when Harry was talking about grief and anger and depression and things of that nature. So, we are living in some challenging times, but I believe that when we come together like we're doing here, we can make a difference. So yeah, we're seeing a increase in substance abuse use like never before. We saw it during 9/11, during the Great Flood of 2016. So many different spaces that has happened in the last couple of years. We saw that addiction increase. Why is that? Because a lot of people self-medicate. You have a lot of people let's not talk about people who are experienced for the first time, but people who or have addiction issues, already. I've been in recovery for 30 years. And I know that, during crisis and times like this, a lot of times people want to self-medicate because they are experiencing depression. They are experiencing anxiety. And that is real. Those are real emotions. And so it's easy for someone to say, you know what, I'm going to just have a glass of wine. And then a glass of wine end up being a bottle of wine. And before you know it, they're in this vicious cycle. Look, everything is okay in moderation. I'm just going to put that out there. But, when people find themselves self-medicating because they want to calm their nerves, or I'm feeling some kind of way, or like Drake said, I'm in my feelings, and they're trying to mask those feelings instead of deal with them or just talk about them. It's easy to just, let me just, just get me a drink, or, let me just take something. There's nothing wrong with taking over the medication that's, over the counter, or going to your healthcare provider to get that. But when you try to do it on your own, see, that's where it gets real sticky. And we have to let people know that when you're having a mental health crisis, for us, depression, anxiety, or things of that nature, it's okay to reach out. In the African American community, we hadn't really been taught that. We were taught to suck it up or to pray. And we need to pray. However, faith without works is dead. And so the other thing is that you have a lot of people who have not been experiencing anxiety or depression, never, because they've never been through anything like this. And so it's easy to say, you know what, I'll just take something to make me sleep. I'll take something to calm my nerves or to help me through this. And so what we're seeing is that people are self-medicating more. Right here in Baton Rouge, we've had a problem with opioid abuse for the last couple of years. We have tripled that number, and we're believing that number has tripled in overdose deaths because of COVID, because more people are, going through a lot. A lot of us, we've never been through this. And so, you're talking about loss, not just loss of loved ones, but job, of our social connection. So people are turning to, more, alcohol use and drug use. So when we find ourselves in places like that, we need to reach out. We need to talk to someone that we trust. If it goes further than that and it's not helping us, then we should talk to our healthcare provider, or talk to the people on staff at our churches and things of that nature. But we are trying to do the best that we can to have more dialogue like this, to let people know that it's okay to be depressed sometime. You can't stay there. You're going to have a little anxiety. We're all experiencing that. But to get the help that they need, because when we start self-medicating, it can take us down a road that, can be a challenge for us. So we're having more conversations like this so people know that, what, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be mad. But you can't let those emotions control you. And you definitely can't self-medicate, because that's when you find yourself getting into trouble.
Thank you so much, Ms. Miles. One more subject we want you to touch on. We're so excited to have Deputy Chief Daniels with us also, because he's also going to add to this part of the conversation. But we're also hearing that not only in the Baton Rouge area, but in our state and in the country, that we're seeing increases in domestic violence as well as child abuse. Can you talk with us about that as well?
Yeah, and I know, like I said, I've been knowing, the deputy for a long time, and the work that, EBR is doing, especially the data that they have, y'all. I'm telling you that the data that they're pushing out, to me, is just a game, changer for our community, because I believe that we need to be led by what the data is saying. And so the data is saying that domestic abuse has skyrocketed. And what we're contributing that to is that, a lot of people used to have a community where they can probably talk to someone, but they're not having that, anymore. And so, people are staying with people who are hurting them. They're perpetrators because they feel they don't have anywhere to go. They don't have those safe spaces to go to, like on their job or to churches or things of that nature. So they feel confined. So they're kind of stuck, if you will. Resources used to be more before COVID. So it's not many resources. We have great organizations like IRIS, like the Butterfly Society, who are doing amazing work. But, we need more. And so you're having people who are not able to get that safety plan and, make that safety plan happen to get out and go live with someone else or do something different. So, when people feel like they're isolated and they have nowhere else to go, then they stay in those spaces already. So with COVID, it just made it, on a 100, because now you're kind of confined to that space. Like I said, you could go to work and talk to your coworker. You could go to church. Well, those places are not happening anymore. And the same thing of basics of child abuse. Look, I do a lot of work in the school, and it breaks my heart to know how many, young people who are suffering with child abuse and sexual trauma. Look, I was molested when I was 7 years old. So I know the trauma and the drama that comes with that. And so you have a lot of kids now, again, they can't go to their schools. They can't talk to their teachers. They can't talk to the social workers that are school-based there. So they're having to stay in that environment where they're, receiving a lot of harm. So we're doing everything that we can. BRPD, like I said, the Butterfly Society, we're doing everything we can to pool our resources together to give people the help that they need so they can get out of those situations and they don't end up, losing their lives.
Thank you so much, Ms. Miles. We appreciate it. And thank you for sharing your personal story as well. Deputy Chief Daniels, thank you for your time. Thank you for all that you do in our community. We know that you serve the community well, and we appreciate that. Ms. Miles alluded to, and I know that I've used some of the data in my research and work as well, but can you talk to us specifically about the data and the information that you are collecting with the Baton Rouge Police Department?
Yes. And first, again, thank you for having me. I'm not a member of Elm Grove Baptist Church, but I am definitely a friend. They're pretty regular, and I know all the faces, and I hope they all remember mine.
Thank you.
But you're absolutely right. Just listening to the first two panelists speak, I mean, when you hear that, even though they're discussing different topics, you see that they are all crossing over.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that we found as well. So from the data standpoint, and how has this pandemic affected crime within our region? I can tell you some of the data all of the data that we've collected is pointing to the same trends that we're seeing around the country. It's hard to believe, but one of the things that people don't realize is that crime is actually down. It's down in almost every category except violent. So we're seeing a true increase in violent crimes. And that is what we have focused all our resources on here at the Baton Rouge Police Department. And I can tell you it's throughout EBR because it's always a collaborative effort. Just to point out one of the things, just so that people put it into perspective, when you think about it, one of the things that we saw has been that true increase in domestic violence homicides. We've seen an increase of over 600% from last year. So that just shows you the increase. The trauma and things that we've saw over this time, and when we talk about trauma, most people want to associate it with just physical wounds, but those are the easiest things to heal.
Right.
The trauma that we're seeing are all the traumas that were described before, things that people are living through and have lived through their whole life. And one of the issues or trends that we've seen around the country is the fact that there aren't any reliefs. Where things, normal life would provide some relief, whether it was the victim or the perpetrator going to work, having that separation. We have stay-at-home orders, and if you look at the unemployment rate right now, we have a lot of people who are not working. So those added stresses only add to the trauma, and it adds to what we're seeing, which is violence. And it's one of the things, like I said, it's plagued our country for a while, particularly domestic violence. But we're seeing it transition into other aspects, as you mentioned, with kids and also violence toward themselves. The suicide rate is, it's unbelievable when we start to look at that data locally as well as around the country comparative, and this time of year just doesn't help that at all, because it's a true reminder of things that people may not have, or it just adds to that depression around the holiday season. So it's quite a few things, but it just amazes me to hear the different areas talk about it, and it all comes back and intertwines in the end.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that data. Definitely some alarming stats that you shared. Before we move on to our next panelist, can you share with us some of the resources that that are available in the community?
Well, I can tell you there are quite a few. So Tanja mentioned two of I swear by them. I make sure I donate to them, and I do everything that I can to help, particularly with the domestic violence side of it. But that's Iris and the Butterfly Society. They have done great work in the Baton Rouge community, and even throughout or just outside of the Baton Rouge community. And that's for your domestic violence. As far as your substance abuse, things along those lines, I'll tell you there are so many resources out there. One of the things I think that people have to realize is, identifying what type of assistance they need, whether it's short-term, long-term, whether it's a true triage of what they have. Some of those resources here are Capital Area Human Services, Baton Rouge Alcohol and Drug Center. Like I said, it's just so many out there, not wanting and definitely not endorsing any, but just to put it out there. And then from the mental health side of it, you have professionals such as Brother Turner that's on the call, a great resource. They actually did a ceremony today. I think there was a ribbon cutting ceremony today for the Bridge Center for Hope. Another excellent resource that's out there in our community. So again, there are so many resources, and if all else fails, don't forget about your local churches, because they normally keep a list of those resources on hand and are more than willing to not only provide you with them, but to help you get the help that you may need.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Daniels. We appreciate it. Again, I want to remind those of you all that are listening in, watching on Facebook or YouTube, share this with your friends so they can join in. If you have any questions, please write them in the chat. Our panelists will be able to answer any questions. Moving on to Miss Olivier. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. All of our panelists so far have given some great information. We would like for you to talk with us about how to not only manage stress-related eating, but what are some of the nutritional things? I know we all hear people talk about the COVID pounds. I know that I've eaten more Oreo cookies in 2020 than I've probably eaten in my entire life. I had to remove them from my grocery list because they were not lasting long. So talk with us about how to manage that stress-related eating. I was reading something that also talked about how we have to make sure that we are aware what stress eating and emotional eating. And I had to pause and think about that myself because it all feels the same to me, like the hunger feels the same. So talk with us about that stress eating that I know that we're all dealing with.
So first, thank you for having me be a part of the panel. I agree with the other panelists that this is such really important information that a lot of people aren't getting from other places. So I just want to point out that stress it certainly has a mental impact, but it also has a physical impact on your body. So sometimes under high stress conditions, it may reflect and show up in itself as being some digestive issues where you feel like maybe your reflux that you maybe dealt with every now and then has significantly increased. The way that your bowels work may change. It can be reflected in fatigue when you're feeling like you just can't get enough sleep, you're overly tired, you never feel rested. Pain issues can also be reflected during high stress times. So something that may have been painful every once in a while is now much more painful. Insomnia certainly can play a role, chest pain. So these are all physical symptoms. We know that mental health is a part of stress, but these are physical ramifications of stress that is happening over time. And it's whenever stress doesn't let up, it can definitely turn into, it's very socially accepted to do stress eating. So we have access to food all the time for a lot of people. And it, just like you mentioned, Ms. Carter, when sometimes we can't define what the difference is between physical hunger and emotional eating. So one of the a telltale sign of physical hunger is when physical hunger comes on, it usually comes on and then it will fade away. Whereas whenever there's stress eating that comes on, you feel like you want to eat right now and it doesn't go away. You have a craving for something that like Oreo cookies and you just can't get it out of your head. You can't stop thinking about it. And so that is a sign that it is an emotional response rather than a physical hunger. So like I said, physical hunger kind of comes and goes until eventually you'll start feeling it in your stomach. Sometimes you start feeling it, maybe feel a little woozy or feel uncomfortable in your head. But it comes and goes and it gradually progresses, whereas stress eating comes on and it feels like it never goes away. And I would say that also that translates also into alcohol. So just like Ms. Miles was saying, that sometimes alcohol becomes something that you have just to calm the nerves a bit, and then next thing you know, you're a bottle in, or you have had an alcoholic beverage, multiple beverages, several nights in a row. And so these are all just some ways that you're self-medicating. And so food is definitely something that we self-medicate with. It's certainly important to recognize the triggers. So sometimes whenever it's something that's big and overbearing, so certainly being quarantined for what feels like months now, kind of come and go in quarantine, is certainly a stress. And when that stress is ongoing for long periods of time, it can create some physiological symptoms. So the stress in and of itself can increase your cortisol levels, which is your stress hormone. Stress also can increase and affect your hunger hormone. So there are two hormones, leptin and ghrelin, that kind of regulate your feelings of hunger and satiety, and stress can really play a big role in dysregulation of all of your cortisol, your leptin, and your ghrelin hormones. So not only is it a mental health issue, it's a physical health issue. And then if stress is left not tended to, then it turns into, the stress eating, the stress alcohol, all of those things can come on pretty quickly. So one of the most first things that you can do is to identify your triggers. So if you know that whenever you start feeling symptoms or start feeling sadness, that's one of your triggers, then being able to identify that and maybe pick up the phone and call someone. So calling someone in the church, calling a family member, calling a friend to, while we can't hang out with those people anymore and we can't be social with them, just being able to listen to them and have conversations. And like Harry was saying, find something to laugh about with your family members or with your friends, even if it is over the phone. You can also some things like you mentioned with your Oreo cookies, it might be best not even having around, not having those available for you. That's a pretty easy way to make sure that you're not going to start eating on those things, but also doing things to just kind of alleviate stress as best you can. So praying for sure, meditation, going for maybe like a walk, a stroll outside so you can get some fresh air. These are all things that you can do to help just kind of manage the stress. So it's hard to say. We don't know when all of this is going to go away, and our life as we knew it will likely never be the same. But being able to move through stress is while we're going through it is also really important too.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. I want to ask you a follow-up question about other things that we can do that will help our nutrition. Talk with us about, we hear a lot about the fruits and vegetables that enhance us with our stress and our emotions. Can you talk with us a little bit about those?
Sure. So I would say there are several nutrients, and remembering, and I have to say this a lot because I think even myself, sometimes we forget that the reason that we're supposed to be eating is to help nourish our body and to give our body the nutrients that it needs so that it feels better mentally, but also feels better physically. So in the midst of all of this COVID stuff, there are three things that I think are really important. So I'm going to get to your question, but three things that are important to help with if you were to get infected with the COVID-19 virus, that are going to help your immune system to be able to fight it off. And we're not hearing enough about this in our local media coverage, but three nutrients. Vitamin D is a big one, and there have been multiple studies that show that increased blood levels of vitamin D it won't prevent you from getting the virus, but it can decrease the effects of the virus. And so vitamin D is measured in what's called IUs, or international units. So I do recommend that everyone start taking vitamin D anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 IUs daily. Zinc is another one. And so about 30 to 45 milligrams of zinc is going to help because it boosts your immune system. And then vitamin C is another one. So vitamin C is one that we can get all of that. Well, not the vitamin D, but we can get the vitamin C and the zinc through food. So with vitamin C, we can do that with oranges, any of our citrus fruit, lemons, limes. We can also get vitamin C through bell peppers. That's a high source of vitamin C. Strawberries. We can get the zinc through most of our meats are going to have zinc in it. So chicken, beef is a higher levels of zinc. Things like pumpkin seeds, oysters are really great for zinc. So making sure that we're nourishing our body so that if we do get the virus, if we happen to get it, then our body has what it needs to be able to fight off the virus, and it doesn't cause long-lasting effects. So aside from that, for general nutrition, the thing that causes the most issues with in health in general is sugar. And so letting go of some of the sugar foods, so candies and cookies and those kind of things, and replacing those. And I know I know what I'm saying, that replacing candy with something like fruit is it's not the same thing. I understand that. But as far as from a health perspective, we can get sweetness, we can get natural sweetness through lots of different fruits. So all of our fruits, bananas, apples, oranges, pears, peaches, all of these things, satsumas, they give us lots of different, they give us sweetness, but they give us a lot of nutritional vitamins and minerals and phytochemicals that can be helpful. And then of course, vegetables, broccoli and cabbage and greens and kale and mustard greens and turnip greens and cauliflower, all of those things we're not getting, generally speaking, in our population. We don't get enough of those to be able to boost our physical health, so that if we are under stress, which depletes our vitamins, we have a harder time being able to be resilient to that stress whenever our body is not when our body's nutrient depleted. So when we don't have those nutrients, it's harder for our body to work with stress.
Thank you so much. I see a lot of comments about the great information that our panelists are sharing right now. So I just wanted you to know that people are tuning in and people are listening, and they're making comments about the awesome information. So thank you all so much. Our last panelist, but certainly not the least panelist on here. It is always great when we have young people to participate in these panels to talk about what's happening with them from their perspective. And I know that many of us that are listening that are not in that young person's category may have people within our households and the extended family that fall into that category. And so, Ms. Maya, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We know that you have personally been impacted by the new virtual world. You were once on campus at Dillard University, and now you're doing virtual. Can you talk with us about what that shift has been like and give us some tips on things that you've done to manage that?
First, thank you for having me. I'm very grateful to be here. But like you said, I was on campus and now I'm virtual, but it was definitely a transition. It's definitely a transition. It's definitely been trying. I will say it's just missing out having your friends and then going out and whatnot, to just being confined to your home. And it's definitely a challenge. But what I've done, like they've all said, coping mechanisms, I've done meditation. Meditation has definitely helped me. Just in at least 10 to 20 minutes, just meditating. And I meditate differently every day, depending on my mood, depending on how I feel. Sometimes I just focus on my breathing and just use a breathing technique. Other times I use music to help me meditate. But I just like to spend just time to just ground myself and to refocus and know what my purpose is, just so I don't get caught up in whatever. So yeah, it's definitely been trying, but it is manageable, especially to all the students. Just want to know the semester may be over, and depending on, no matter what GPA you may have had, you did great regardless, and your GPA does not define your intelligence. And I just have to get that out there. But for everyone, I can definitely say that this has definitely been a trying time for each and every one of us, but it is manageable. It is doable. I know everyone doesn't adapt the same, but find things in your everyday life that just makes you happy and spend time doing those things. So I know for me, listening to music, that makes me happy. So I do it very often. And yeah, just don't try to overindulge in like food or whatever. Don't get sucked in that, but do everything in moderation. I'm not saying that don't enjoy yourself, but do everything in moderation. If you go out, please be, of everyone around you. Please be cautious of everyone around you. So yes, you can still live a life, but be very cautious and be persistent in what you do.
Thank you, Maya. One follow-up question, and I don't want to put you on the spot for the worldwide, but us adults, we rarely get the opportunity to ask the young people if there was something that they wanted us to know. So if there is something that you want us to know about what this is like for you, that we can do better as adults in supporting you, what is that one thing?
Um, Interesting. Just realize that everyone goes through emotions. Just like y'all have bad days, we have bad days as well. Um, yeah, so every day is peaches and cream for us, but just understanding that we go through emotions just as y'all do. Sometimes we don't know how to vocalize them the best, but we do have stress. But sometimes we just feel like we need. I don't know. That was an interesting question.
I think your answer is great. I think your answer is what many young people have shared. And so I think it is a perfect answer. I think that we have to be reminded as adults about that sometimes, that young people have their own emotions and they have their own bad days. And so we appreciate you reminding us of that, Maya. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question that has come up from someone, and it's talking about social media. Would you all advise us against social media? And it says social media gives us a facade sometimes that everyone is believing that everyone else's life is so amazing. So, what would be your advice on social media? And I'm actually going to open that up to any one of our panelists who wants to answer. For our technical manager, if you can just kind of wave your hand if you want to be the one to answer, so he can help us to manage all of our panelists answering at one time. But would you all advise against social media? Okay, Mr. Turner.
Okay. Real quick, my advice on social media is to refrain as much as possible. It has been one of my Achilles tendon as well. Um, but I would refrain. There's an article I put together, a literature review I put together called Dopamine Fast. And Facebook, social media in particular, gives you this false sense of connection. It's pseudo connection, but it's still empty. It's like eating fake food. It doesn't give you the nutrition that you're actually seeking. Know what it is that you're seeking before you go and try to find a solution to it. So if the solution is connection, then you find out what is the most feasible way with the least amount of resistance that you can form a true, authentic connection with somebody else based off of your values. Because ultimately, our values are the closest thing that represents who we are in this place of isness, where everything is in this 3D dimension. So as far as social media is concerned, what I would say is try your best to stay off of it unless you absolutely have to deal with it. And if you have to deal with it, do it in moderation. And if you are ticked off, log out of your account immediately and just come back whenever you come. Because whenever you're ticked off, you most definitely will say some stuff that you will wish you had not done. And once it's out there, it's out there. That's the thing about the internet, is that once it's out there forever. Even if you delete it, it's out there forever. So as far as pulling up skeletons, I'm pretty sure young Maya right here, she doesn't want any of her in the middle of an emotional pouring out on Facebook. I'm pretty sure she didn't want that brought up when she runs for president. I know you're running for president, Maya. I see it in your face. But you just got to be mindful. Don't react during times of extreme stress. The word for the year, and this is something that I looked up and that I'm keeping in mind, and I'm telling my family members so I can be held accountable. But the word for the year for 2021 for me is equanimity. which is the ability to maintain cool, calm composure under immense distress, during times of immense distress. And most certainly a lot of adapting we all gonna have to do too. So that stress is there, you know. So yeah, my answer is try to minimize.
Thank you,
social
Mr.
media
Turner. Any of our
contact.
panelists would like to add to that about social media? Well, again, we thank you all so much for joining us. I am going to give each panelist 1 to 2 minutes to give us one final statement for this evening. We want to be aware of the time. So we have about 7 minutes left. So we will give each panelist 1 to 2 minutes to give us one summarization of tonight, one great piece of advice so that we can move forward. Ms. Virginia Williams is saying this panel is very informative and thank you all so much. It says that multiple aspects in dealing with this pandemic. So thank you very much from Ms. Virginia Williams. I will go to Ms. Olivier first. Give us 1 to 2 closing statement, 1 to 2 minute closing statement.
Well, I would say we are all under unprecedented time, and I know we've heard that term so many times, but we're in an unusual space, and it's not an individual person or an individual community that's going through it. It really is the whole entire country for sure, and even the whole world is going through this very unusual time. So we are trying to figure out a lot of things different, along with trying to keep the same kind of norm as much as we can. So be gentle with yourself. Give yourself some flexibility to do things that aren't what you would normally do, and don't be too judgmental on yourself. And let's just spread love. I mean, ultimately, I think that's all what we're all seeking is love. So start with loving yourself, and then love your neighbor and your family and your church members and your friends, and just spread the love as much as possible.
Thank you so much. I really, really like that. Be gentle with yourself. I like that. Be gentle and spread love. Ms. Miles.
First of all, again, I thank you so much for, having this, most candid conversation, and we need to have them more. But, my mom always told me this: charity begins at home and spreads abroad. And so we have to start these conversations in our home, asking our loved one, how are you feeling today? And if they tell you okay, and you're not sure what okay is, ask them to define what okay is. I do a lot of healing circles across the city. And I tell people all the time, the best healing circle that you can have is in your house. We talked about social media not too long ago. Refrain from some of that screen time. I know Netflix is, pretty cool right now. And it's a good way just to get on that couch and just kind of zone out. But, shut it off and just have a time with your family and ask everybody, say, you know what, we're going to do a daily check-in or weekly check-in. How you really feeling? How's your day going? Because we're all over the place with our emotions. Emotions are good, and we have to learn how to manage them. And we have to be okay in hearing if somebody say, I'm having a bad day. A lot of times we don't do active listening, and we need to do that, but it needs to start in our own home. With our children, your kid might be 5. Ask them how they're doing. They see stuff on TV. They hear stuff. They're affected by this as well. So I believe having those candid conversations like we're doing right now needs to start in our home, because healing begins in the house. And each and every one of us has a birthright to heal. This has been an emotional year, and we still got some ways to go. So I think that, having these conversations in our home first with our children, our husbands. Look, I had to have it with my husband. We had to have it with each other, and do those check-ins with your family first, and then, your friends and, and your other circles of influence. But just remember, healing starts in the house, and have the conversation about, people's mental wellness, and making sure that you're the keeper of the kitchen. If you're the one who cook, you're the keeper of the kitchen. So what's coming in that house is on you. I'm just saying. So and just give yourself some grace, and give your family member and give the people around you some grace, because we all need it during this time.
Thank you, Ms. Miles. I appreciate that. Ms. Miles is saying for us to check in with one another, check on ourselves. When someone says that they're just doing okay, figure out what it is that actually means. So thank you, Ms. Miles. Mr. Turner.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. First, thank you. This has been a truly a blessing to me, this occasion. I'm blessed to be on this panel with such educated people. And Maya, you're an inspiration. I just want to say that you are an inspiration. And so thank you, Elmwood. Thank you for inviting me here. Now, with that being said, what I would want to leave you with is be intentional. Intentionality is the matrix of creation. You must be intentional. Don't say, I'm going to call so and so. Be intentional about calling so and so. Don't say, I'm going to go and find a provider. Be intentional about finding a provider. And then also understand that during this time with great adversity and great stress and great change, understand that change is inevitable, but growth is optional. So we must choose wisely. We have to accept the seasons of our heart the same way we accept the seasons that pass over our fields. And no, it's not easy. It won't be easy, but you got to remember that no matter what it looks like, we walk by faith, not by sight. And faith is not belief in what you do see, but acceptance of the unseen. You got to accept that there's a brighter day coming, that even though it's nighttime right now, that the sun eventually will come back out and shine over you. And also the last thing I want to say to you is make sure that you keep you some endurance and patience with you. Patience is the capacity to hold your pain for an extended period of time, but endurance is that push through. Arnold Schwarzenegger, they asked Arnold Schwarzenegger one time, hey, how many push-ups can you do? Arnold Schwarzenegger said, I don't know. I only start counting when it starts hurting. A lot of us are hurting right now. And you got to remember that the race is not given to the swift, but those that choose to endure it. It is your endurance. I know you're tired. I'm tired too. But we are called to endure because we walk by faith and not by sight. So that's what I leave with.
Thank you so much, Mr. Turner, reminding us about faith, patience, and endurance. We appreciate it. Miss Maya. If you're speaking, Miss Maya, I think you might be frozen or on mute. Okay, try it now.
Good. I'm good now.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Just one more thing. Just thank you all again for having me. Thank you for all these panelists. Y'all all amazing. Just one thing that I will leave you with is my 3 R's that I stand by, and that's rest, rejuvenate, and recharge. Listen to your body. Listen to what your body is in need of. Make sure that you do rest. Make sure that you are recharging yourself. Make sure that you are drinking water. Before you get out of bed, say 10 things that you are grateful for. So express gratitude every day, all the time. It, like Miss Oliver said, express love. Another thing, I'm someone who's also going through grief as well as being a college student. So there's a lot going on. But just to let you know that, like Mr. Turner said, it may be dark right now, but it does get brighter. So that's my inspiration. So if you are going through any type of grief, any type of bereavement, just know that it is not linear. Like you said earlier, just know that some days are going to be better than others, but just know that God did not put you through this to struggle. He put you through this to see you endure and to persevere. So I know you'll come out victorious. I know that y'all will come out on top. So like I said, again, thank you so much for having me on this panel with these amazing panelists. And that's why I leave you with.
Ms. Maya, you have been absolutely amazing. Thank you for reminding us to rest, rejuvenate, and recharge. Thank you for reminding us to be compassionate. We appreciate it. I want you to know I'm going to turn over the host job to you on the next one. You have been a star. Thank you so much. Deputy Chief Daniel.
Yes, ma'am.
Give us 1 to 2 sentence statement on some advice for us.
I'm gonna kind of change it up. I want to just make a quick observation, and then I'll close with my motto. The observation I make is just the fact that if you look across everything that we're talking about, everyone's affected by it. You know, there's no such thing as discrimination when it comes to the pandemic and all the things that we go through in life. And whether it's old, young, black, white, male, female, education, or even socioeconomics, everyone is going through these same things, and we can get through it. And I can tell you, just listening to the things that each panelist says, I literally wrote down something from each one that I'm going to take away from it. But I'll tell you, years ago, I stopped making New Year's resolutions because I always broke them, you know, like most. And what I did is came up with a motto, and I've lived by that motto every day of my life since that time. And it's very simple. There are people out there who wish they had your problems. We always think that we have it bad, but there are people who would literally do anything to be in the positions that we are. So we should just be appreciative of what we have, learn to smile and realize and be thankful for all of those things. So with that being said, I thank you for the opportunity to be here. If anyone ever has any questions for me, all my contact information is available. And
Thank
I'm always
you,
here to
Chief
help.
Daniels. We
Thank you.
appreciate that. Reminding us to be grateful is always important. So we thank you. To all of our panelists, again, thank you for your time tonight. We appreciate it. I am actually going to turn it back over to Ms. Moore, who is going to close us out for the evening.
Our panelists, I don't know what to tell you. Let's just know that on the back end, I became your tech support back here. But I want to tell you all, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for giving us all this inspiration. Ms. Olivier, oh my goodness, the COVID-19, and what to eat. I'm a nurse and I know what I'm supposed to do, you know, but still the stressors of that comes into play. I have students on here that's watching. So I do want to express to them as well that listening to all of this for this everyday life, the stressors of going to school, the stressors of dealing with life in general. I love some of the things that all of you have stated, that we have to rest, we have to recharge, we have to rejuvenate. Mr. Turner, we have to make certain that we really listen to our body. I use Kubler-Ross a lot. That I call it DABDA. That's how I remember it. Yes, we're understanding that you know, in our family we have dealt with death. Unfortunately, in our family, with we have quite a few loved ones that succumb due to COVID-19 or to other circumstances. So we are grateful and we are dealing with our own way of how to manage this grief part. But I'm so excited to hear how all of you have come together and just kind of gave your little tidbit about how to really manage this in this unprecedented time. We're hoping that this upcoming year will give us some new opportunities, some new way of life. But be mindful, everyone, viewers, everyone, be mindful, pay attention to your body, pay attention to your emotional state, and obviously pay attention to others. We thank you, Ms. Carter, our own Sister Carter, for being an exemplary host. Yay! We thank you so much for facilitating this wonderful discussion. And of course, we also want to thank our pastor, Dr. Errol Domingue, for allowing us to have this wonderful conversation so that we can talk about true things that are really going on in our community and with our minds and with our bodies. So thank you, Pastor Domingue, for allowing us to speak to everyone worldwide in this app, in this way. So thank you all. Deputy Chief, keep going out there and fight the violence, right? So let's keep that down. Ms. Tanja Miles, we appreciate your expertise as well. My own daughter, Maya McCorder, thank you for your insight as well, giving us that youthful perspective and making certain that we recognize that we got to do better and we have to listen as well. So that stress is real for you as well. I do have a few things I would like to share with you all, just in case. One of those things that our pastor does a great job at is he likes to make certain that we are still doing the right thing at all times. We have COVID testing at our church on Saturday at 10 a.m. So right at our church from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So if you want to join that, please do so. Okay, from 10 to 2, just bring your ID with you, and we'll be happy to assist you with your testing. We will also be providing those participants with a little goodie bag as well to thank you for your community testing. I believe that is all I have for this evening. I know that Elm Grove have quite a few things going forward. We feel free to look at all of our great opportunities that are coming up, from prayer all the way to some other activities that are coming up. So please stay tuned for that. Elm Grove is in action and on the move. We thank you all. Take care, panelists.
Thank you.